Chapter 1. I always loved the quiet at closing time. It was the one part of the day when the world finally stopped asking anything of me. The last customer had left with a cheerful wave, the bell above the door chiming softly behind her, and I stood alone in the warm glow of my little plant shop. The air smelled like damp soil and rosemary, and the fading sunlight turned the leaves of my ferns and pothos into soft silhouettes against the windows. I moved slowly through the aisles, brushing my fingers over familiar leaves, whispering small apologies to the ones I'd forgotten to water at lunch. Plants were easy, predictable. They didn't hide things or speak in half-truths. They didn't leave you wondering what you'd done wrong. I flipped the sign to closed, locked the door, and reached for the light switch. That was when I saw him. A shadow shifted on the other side of the glass, tall and still and unmistakably real. My breath caught in my throat. For a second, I thought it was a trick of the dimming light, some passing stranger pausing to check their reflection. But then the figure stepped closer, and the street lamp outside caught the sharp line of a jaw I knew better than my own reflection. Dante Hale. My ex-husband. The man I had once loved so fiercely it felt like a second heartbeat. The man I had left because loving him had started to feel like standing in the dark, waiting for a door that never opened. He looked wrong. Not just tired. Not just worn down. He looked hollow, like someone had drained the color from him. His skin was pale, almost gray beneath the streetlight, and his dark hair clung damply to his forehead. His shoulders sagged in a way I had never seen before, not even on the worst nights of our marriage. And his eyes, those warm, molten gold eyes that used to make me feel seen, were dim, unfocused, as if he were fighting to stay upright. My hand tightened on the light switch. No, he couldn't be here. Not after 2 years of silence. Not after I'd finally built a life that didn't ache every time I woke up. He lifted a hand and pressed it to the glass. His fingers trembled. Lorelei, he mouthed. I felt the name like a bruise pressed too hard. I didn't open the door. I didn't even move. I just stared at him, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. He looked like he might collapse right there on the sidewalk, but I couldn't make myself reach for the lock. Not yet. Not until I understood why he was here. He knocked once, soft, almost apologetic. I swallowed hard and shook my head, pointing toward the alley beside the shop. If he wanted to talk, he wasn't doing it through my front door. He nodded, relief flickering across his face, and stepped back. I grabbed my keys, took a steadying breath, and slipped out the back door into the cool evening air. The alley smelled faintly of rain and the bakery next door, and for a moment I let myself breathe it in, grounding myself before facing him. Dante stood at the far end, leaning heavily against the brick wall. Up close, he looked even worse. His breathing was uneven, his jaw clenched tight as if he were holding something back. When he lifted his head to look at me, something inside me twisted painfully. Lorelei, he said, and his voice cracked on my name. Thank you for, he stopped, swallowing hard. For coming out here. I crossed my arms, keeping distance between us. What do you want, Dante? He flinched. Actually flinched. Dante Hale, who never let anything touch him, who carried the weight of an entire pack on his shoulders without blinking, looked like my words had cut straight through him. I need your help, he said quietly. It's serious. I almost laughed. You don't get to show up after 2 years and say that like it means something. I know. His voice was rough, strained. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I wouldn't be here if it wasn't life or death. I stared at him, trying to read the truth in his face. He looked awful, pale, shaking, sweat beading at his temples. But Dante had always been good at hiding things. Too good. What's wrong with you? I asked, softer than I meant to. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. It's my wolf. A cold shiver ran down my spine. What about your wolf? It's failing. He pressed a hand to his chest, fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. Losing control. Losing strength. I can't, his breath hitched, and he braced himself against the wall. I can't hold it together much longer. I took a step back. Why are you telling me this? His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw the man I used to know, The one who held me like I was the only thing keeping him grounded. Because it's happening, he whispered, because of us. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? He shook his head, frustrated, pained. I can't explain it all right now. He winced, doubling over slightly. I'm barely holding on. Dante. His eyes flashed gold. Not bright and fierce like they used to. Dim, flickering. Like a candle guttering in the wind. The air around him rippled, the faintest shimmer of heat and power. His breath came out in a low, involuntary growl, and for a terrifying second, I thought he might shift right there in the alley. Dante, stop, I said, instinctively reaching out before snatching my hand back. You're losing control. I know, he ground out. That's why I came. His voice broke. I need you. The words hit me like a blow. I stepped back, shaking my head. No, you don't get to say that. Not after everything. He closed his eyes, pain flickering across his face, not physical pain, something deeper. Lorelei, please. Just talk to the healer. Let her explain. If you don't want to help after that, I'll leave you alone. I swear it. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My heart was beating too fast, my thoughts tangled and sharp. He pushed off the wall, unsteady on his feet. I shouldn't have come this late. I'm sorry. He took a shaky breath. I'll go. He turned away, and for a moment I saw him stumble, just slightly, but enough to make my chest tighten. I didn't call out to him. I didn't run after him. I just stood there, watching him disappear into the shadows, feeling something inside me crack open in a way I'd sworn I'd never let happen again. When I finally went back inside, the shop felt different. Too quiet. Too still. Like the air itself was holding its breath. I locked the door, turned off the lights, and leaned against the counter, pressing a hand to my chest. I had spent 2 years trying to forget Dante Hale. But the truth settled over me like a whisper I didn't want to hear. I still cared. And that terrified me more than anything. Chapter 2. I didn't sleep that night. I tried, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dante standing outside my shop, pale and trembling, his eyes flickering gold like a dying ember. I kept telling myself it wasn't my problem anymore, that whatever was happening to him was the natural consequence of a life I'd walked away from. But the truth was harder, sharper. It pressed against my ribs every time I breathed. I still cared. And I hated that. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up on pretending I'd sleep and padded into the kitchen, wrapping my cardigan tighter around myself. The apartment above the shop was small but warm, filled with soft lamplight and the faint scent of eucalyptus from the diffuser I'd forgotten to turn off. I made tea I didn't drink and sat at the tiny table, staring at the steam curling upward like it was trying to tell me something. Dante's voice kept replaying in my head. It's happening because of us. My wolf is failing. I need you. I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to push the words away. They didn't belong here, in this quiet life I'd built. They belonged to the past, to a world of moonlit forests and pack politics and a marriage that had slowly unraveled until I barely recognized myself. But the image of him stumbling into the shadows wouldn't leave me. By morning, I felt wrung out, like someone had taken all the softness out of me and left only the ache. I opened the shop on autopilot, moving through the motions with a kind of numb precision. Customers came and went, chatting about weekend plans and weather forecasts, and I nodded along, pretending I wasn't unraveling inside. Around noon, I found myself staring at my phone, thumb hovering over a number I hadn't dialed in 2 years. The Hale Pack healer. I told myself I was only calling to confirm Dante had exaggerated. That he'd been dramatic or manipulative or both. That this wasn't my responsibility. But when the healer answered, her voice warm and familiar, all my practiced excuses fell apart. Lorelei, she said softly, like she'd been expecting this. I'm glad you called. I swallowed hard. I saw Dante last night. A pause. Not surprised, concerned. How did he seem? Bad, I admit it. Really bad. Another pause. He didn't tell you everything, did he? My stomach tightened. No. He said his wolf is failing. That it's because of us. The healer exhaled, a sound full of sympathy and something heavier. It's true. I closed my eyes, gripping the counter. How? Because the mate bond was never completed, she said gently. And breaking it through divorce destabilized him. His wolf has been weakening for months. I felt the room tilt. He never told me. He thought he was protecting you, she said. But now he's out of time. Lorelei, he needs you. You're the only one who can stabilize the bond. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. I can't just walk back into that world. I know, she said softly. But if you don't come, he may not survive this. The words hit me like a physical blow. I hung up without promising anything. I couldn't. My mind was spinning too fast, tangled with memories I'd spent years trying to bury. Dante laughing as he carried me through the forest on his back. Dante holding me after nightmares, whispering that he'd never let anything hurt me. Dante shutting me out night after night until I felt like a ghost in my own marriage. I didn't know which version of him was real anymore. But I knew one thing, I couldn't let him die. Not like this. Not alone. By late afternoon, I'd made my decision. I closed the shop early, ignoring the curious looks from the bakery owner next door, and drove home to pack a small overnight bag. Just the essentials. Just enough for one visit. I told myself I wasn't staying. I told myself I wasn't getting involved. I told myself this was a one-time thing. But my hands shook as I locked the apartment door behind me. The drive to the Hale estate took less than an hour, but it felt like crossing a border into a life I'd sworn I'd never return to. The forest grew denser the farther I went, the trees arching overhead like they remembered me. The air smelled different here, wilder, charged with the faint hum of magic I'd once lived with every day. When the estate finally came into view, my breath caught. The mansion stood exactly as I remembered it, sprawling stone walls, tall windows glowing with warm light, the Hale crest carved above the entrance. It looked timeless, untouched by the 2 years I'd been gone. But I had changed. And stepping out of the car felt like stepping into a memory I wasn't ready to face. 2 pack members stood at the entrance, their expressions shifting from shock to something unreadable when they recognized me. One of them murmured my name under his breath, like he wasn't sure I was real. I forced myself to walk forward, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. Inside, the foyer was warm and bright, filled with the familiar scent of cedar and something uniquely Hale, wolf magic, earthy and electric. My chest tightened painfully. And then I saw him. Dante stood at the base of the staircase, waiting for me. He looked better. Not healed, not whole, but steadier than last night. His eyes brightened the moment they met mine, a flicker of gold sparking to life. His posture straightened, his breathing eased, and something in the air shifted, like the house itself recognized me. Lorelei, he said softly. My name in his voice felt like a bruise pressed too hard. I didn't move toward him. I didn't smile. I just stood there, gripping the strap of my bag like it was the only thing keeping me upright. I'm here to talk to the healer, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. That's all. A shadow crossed his face, hurt, maybe, but he nodded. Of course. He stepped aside, giving me space, and for a moment, our shoulders brushed as I walked past him. The contact was brief, accidental, but it sent a warm, electric pulse through me that I felt all the way to my fingertips. I hated that my body remembered him. I hated that the bond remembered him. I hated that part of me still wanted to turn around and look at him again. But I kept walking. Because whatever happened next, I needed answers. And I needed them before my heart betrayed me all over again. Chapter 3. Walking into the Hale estate felt like stepping into a memory I'd spent 2 years trying to forget. The foyer was warm and bright, lit by the same chandelier that used to cast soft gold across the marble floors when I'd come home late from the shop. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something wilder, wolf magic humming beneath the surface like a heartbeat I'd once known too well. I stood just inside the doorway, clutching the strap of my bag, trying to steady my breathing. I'd told myself I was ready for this. That I could walk in, get answers, and walk out again without letting anything touch me. But the moment I crossed the threshold, the past rose up around me like a tide. Pack members moved through the hallways, their voices low, their eyes flicking toward me with a mixture of surprise and something else, hope, maybe, or suspicion. I couldn't tell. I didn't want to know. I kept my gaze forward, refusing to let their whispers sink into my skin. And then I saw him. Dante stood at the base of the staircase, waiting for me. He looked steadier than he had last night, but only just. His posture was straighter, his breathing more even, but there was still a faint tremor in his hands, a tightness around his eyes that told me he was holding himself together by sheer force of will. When his gaze met mine, something flickered, gold, warm, alive, and for a moment, I felt the bond tug at me like a thread pulling taut. "Lorelei," he said softly. My name in his voice felt like a bruise pressed too hard. I didn't move toward him. I didn't smile. I just nodded once, keeping my expression neutral. "I'm here to talk to the healer. That's all." A shadow crossed his face, hurt, maybe, but he didn't argue. He stepped aside, giving me space, and I walked past him, careful not to brush against him even though the air between us felt charged, warm, familiar in a way that made my chest ache. The healer's office was down a long hallway lined with old portraits of Hale ancestors, stern faces, sharp eyes, all of them carrying the same quiet intensity Dante had inherited. I used to walk this hallway every day, tracing the carved wooden frames with my fingertips, imagining what it would be like to belong to this world fully. To be Luna. To be his. I pushed the thought away before it could settle. The healer, Marin, stood when I entered. She was older than I remembered, her silver hair pulled into a loose braid, her eyes warm and kind. She crossed the room and pulled me into a gentle hug before I could protest. "Lorelei," she murmured. "It's good to see you." I swallowed hard. I wish it were under different circumstances. She nodded, her expression softening. "I know. Sit, please." I lowered myself into the chair across from her desk, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. Dante lingered near the doorway, leaning against the frame as if he needed it to stay upright. I didn't look at him, but I felt him, like a warmth at the edge of my awareness, a presence I couldn't ignore. Marin sat across from me, folding her hands. "I'm going to be honest with you, Lorelei. Dante's condition is serious." I nodded stiffly. "He said his wolf is failing." "It is," she confirmed. "And it's directly connected to the mate bond." My stomach tightened. "But we never completed the bond." "That's the problem," Marin said gently. "The bond was initiated, but not sealed. When you divorced, it didn't break cleanly. It fractured. And that fracture has been weakening Dante's wolf ever since." I stared at her, the words sinking in slowly, painfully. "He never told me any of this." Marin's gaze flicked toward Dante, who looked away, jaw clenched. "He believed he was protecting you." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "By shutting me out? By letting our marriage fall apart without ever telling me why?" Dante flinched, and for a moment, guilt flickered across his face. But he didn't speak. He didn't defend himself. He just stood there, silent, as if he knew there was nothing he could say that would make it better. Marin continued gently, "Lorelei, the bond is unstable. Dante's wolf is losing its anchor. Without intervention, he could lose control entirely or lose the wolf altogether." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What do you need me to do?" "Stay," she said simply. "For a few days. The bond responds to proximity. Your presence stabilizes him." I shook my head, overwhelmed. "I don't know if I can." "You don't have to decide right now," Marin said softly. "But understand this. Without you, Dante may not survive." The room felt suddenly too small, too warm, too full of memories I wasn't ready to face. I stood abruptly, needing space, needing air. Dante straightened as I moved past him, his eyes searching mine. "Lorelei," he said quietly, "I'm sorry." The words were soft, raw, almost broken. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat felt tight, my chest aching with too many emotions I'd spent years trying to bury. I walked out of the office, down the hallway, past the portraits and the memories and the ghosts of the life I'd once imagined. I didn't stop until I reached the guest wing, the place that had once been my home. My old room was exactly as I'd left it. The same soft blue curtains. The same quilt folded at the foot of the bed. The same framed photo on the nightstand, me and Dante at the summer festival, laughing, carefree, before everything fell apart. My breath caught. He hadn't changed anything. Not a single thing. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my hands trembling. I had come here for answers. I had come here to help him survive. But sitting in that room, surrounded by the remnants of a life I'd tried so hard to forget, I realized something I wasn't ready to admit. I wasn't just here for him. I was here because part of me had never stopped loving him. Chapter 4. I didn't realize how tightly I'd been holding my breath until I stepped into my old room and the air left my lungs in a slow, shaky exhale. Everything was exactly as I remembered it. The soft blue curtains I'd chosen on a whim during a summer sale. The quilt I'd stitched with Marin during long winter evenings. The framed photo on the nightstand, me and Dante at the summer festival, laughing like we had all the time in the world. It felt like walking into a memory that hadn't aged with me. I set my bag down on the bed, my fingers brushing the familiar fabric. The room smelled faintly of cedar and lavender, like someone had been airing it out, keeping it ready. Waiting. I didn't want to think about what that meant. A soft knock sounded at the door, and I stiffened. I didn't have to ask who it was. I could feel him, like a warmth pressing gently against the edge of my awareness, a presence I'd once known as intimately as my own heartbeat. Lorelei. Dante's voice was quiet, careful. Marin wants to begin the ritual soon. If you're ready. I wasn't ready. Not even close. But I opened the door anyway. Dante stood there, looking steadier than he had earlier, though there was still a faint tremor in his hands. His eyes brightened when they met mine, a soft flicker of gold that made something inside me twist painfully. Okay, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Let's get this over with. He nodded, stepping back to give me space. I followed him down the hallway, my heart pounding with every step. The house felt different now, warmer, more alive, like it was responding to something I couldn't see. Marin waited for us in a small sitting room near the back of the estate. The curtains were drawn, candles flickering on every surface, casting soft shadows across the walls. The air smelled of sage and something sweeter, honeysuckle maybe. It felt intimate, almost sacred. Thank you for coming, Marin said gently. This won't hurt. It's simply a way to stabilize the bond temporarily. Think of it as reconnecting the threads that were frayed. I swallowed hard. What do I have to do? Just sit with him, she said. Talk. Share space. Let the bond remember what it once was. That sounded deceptively simple. Sharing space with Dante had never been the problem. It was everything else that had broken us. Dante sat on the couch, leaving a respectful distance between us. I lowered myself onto the cushion beside him, careful not to touch him. Even so, the moment I sat down, I felt it, a soft, warm pull, like a thread tugging gently at my chest. Marin lit another candle, murmuring something under her breath. The flame flickered, and the air seemed to hum. Just breathe, she said. Let the bond settle. I tried. I really did. But sitting this close to Dante, feeling the warmth of him, the familiar scent of pine and smoke, and something uniquely him, it was overwhelming. Memories rose up unbidden, soft and sharp all at once. The first time he'd held my hand. The night he'd carried me through the forest under a full moon. The mornings we'd woken tangled together, sunlight spilling across the sheets. And then the nights he'd come home late, distant, closed off. The arguments that never quite became arguments, because he refused to explain anything. The silence that grew between us until it felt like a wall. I forced myself to breathe through the ache. Dante's voice broke the quiet. I didn't expect you to come. I kept my gaze on the candle flame. I didn't expect you to show up at my shop. He let out a soft, humorless laugh. Fair enough. Silence settled between us again, but it wasn't the cold, heavy silence of our last months together. This one felt tentative, fragile, like we were both afraid to move too quickly. I'm sorry, he said suddenly, his voice low. For everything. For shutting you out. For not telling you the truth. I closed my eyes, the words hitting harder than I wanted them to. You had so many chances, Dante. So many nights when I begged you to talk to me. I know. His voice cracked. I thought I was protecting you. I turned to look at him then, unable to hold back the frustration that had been simmering for years. Protecting me from what? From being your wife? From knowing you? From being part of your life? He flinched, and for a moment, I saw the truth in his eyes: fear, regret, longing. From the pack, he whispered. From the danger. From the expectations. From the bond. The bond. The thing that had tied us together even when everything else was falling apart. I looked away, my throat tight. You should have trusted me. I know, he said again, softer this time. I'm trying to fix that now. The bond pulsed gently between us, warm and steady. I felt his emotions through it, hesitant, raw, painfully sincere. It made my chest ache in a way I wasn't ready for. Marin stepped forward, her voice soft. That's enough for tonight. The bond is responding. You both need rest. I stood quickly, needing space, needing air. Dante rose too, but he didn't reach for me. He didn't try to stop me. He just watched me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Good night, Lorelei, he said quietly. I nodded, unable to speak, and walked back to my room. When I closed the door behind me, I leaned against it, pressing a hand to my chest. The bond was still there, warm and insistent, like a heartbeat beneath my own. I hated how much I felt it. I hated how much I still felt him. But as I crawled into bed, staring at the ceiling in the flickering candlelight, I couldn't deny the truth that settled over me like a whisper. Being near him felt like coming home. And that terrified me more than anything. Chapter 5. I woke the next morning feeling like I'd barely slept at all. My dreams had been a blur of half-formed memories, Dante's hands on my waist as we danced in the kitchen, the sound of his laugh echoing through the halls, the way he used to whisper my name like it was something sacred. I'd tried to push them away, but they clung to me like mist, lingering even as sunlight filtered through the curtains. For a moment, I lay still, listening to the quiet hum of the estate. It was strange how familiar it all felt. The soft creak of the old floorboards. The distant murmur of pack members starting their day. The faint scent of pine drifting in from the forest. It was like stepping back into a life I'd left behind but never fully escaped. I forced myself out of bed, splashed cold water on my face, and tried to steady my breathing. Today was supposed to be simple. Breakfast. Another ritual session. A few conversations. Nothing more. I could handle that. I had to. When I stepped into the hallway, Dante was already waiting. He stood near the staircase, hands tucked into the pockets of his jeans, shoulders tense. His hair was still damp from a shower, and he looked better. Not fully healed, but stronger than yesterday. His eyes brightened when they met mine, a soft flicker of gold that made my heart stutter. Good morning, he said quietly. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Morning. We walked to the dining room together, a careful distance between us. The silence wasn't hostile, but it wasn't comfortable either. It felt like walking across thin ice, every step deliberate, every breath measured. Breakfast was simple: eggs, toast, fruit, but I barely tasted any of it. I was too aware of Dante sitting across from me, too aware of the way his gaze kept drifting toward me, as if he were trying to memorize every detail. I tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the sunlight spilling across the tablecloth, the soft clink of silverware, the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. Halfway through the meal, Dante cleared his throat. Did you sleep okay? I looked up, surprised by the gentleness in his voice. Not really. He nodded, his jaw tightening. I didn't either. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything at all. The silence stretched between us again, but this time it felt heavier, weighted with things neither of us knew how to voice. After breakfast, Marin led us back to the sitting room for another ritual session. The candles were already lit, their warm glow casting soft shadows across the walls. The air smelled of sage and something sweeter, honeysuckle maybe. It felt intimate, almost sacred. Just sit together, Marin said gently. Talk. Let the bond settle. Dante and I sat on the couch, the same careful distance between us as before. I could feel the warmth of him, the steady pull of the bond, the way it hummed beneath my skin like a quiet song I'd forgotten the words to. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Dante exhaled slowly. Lorelei. I know I owe you explanations. I stared at my hands, twisting them in my lap. You owe me more than that. I know. His voice was soft, raw. I don't know where to start. Try the truth, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. For once. He flinched and guilt flickered across his face. You're right. I should have told you everything. I should have trusted you. Then why didn't you? I asked, my voice cracking despite my best efforts. Why did you shut me out? Why did you let our marriage fall apart without ever giving me a chance to understand? He looked down, his hands curling into fists. Because I was scared. I blinked, thrown off by the honesty in his voice. Scared of what? Of losing you, he whispered. Of the pack. Of the bond. Of everything I couldn't control. I stared at him, stunned. You pushed me away because you were afraid of losing me? Yes. He looked up, and the pain in his eyes made my chest ache. I thought if I kept you at a distance, you'd be safe. I thought if I didn't complete the bond, you wouldn't be tied to the pack. I thought I was protecting you. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. You weren't protecting me, Dante. You were shutting me out. You made me feel like I wasn't enough. Like I was a burden. Like you didn't want me. His breath hitched. I wanted you more than anything. That was the problem. The bond pulsed between us, warm and insistent, like it was responding to the truth in his words. I felt his emotions through it, regret, longing, fear, love. It was overwhelming, too much, too fast. I looked away, trying to steady my breathing. You should have told me. You should have trusted me to make my own choices. I know, he said again, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm trying to fix that now. The room felt too warm, too full of memories and emotions I wasn't ready to face. I stood abruptly, needing space, needing air. I need a minute, I said, my voice shaking. Dante didn't try to stop me. He just nodded, his expression soft and unbearably sad. Take all the time you need. I walked out of the room, down the hallway, past the portraits and the memories and the ghosts of the life I'd once imagined. I didn't stop until I reached the back garden, where the air was cool and crisp and the scent of pine drifted through the breeze. I sank onto a stone bench, pressing a hand to my chest. The bond was still there, warm and steady, humming beneath my skin like a heartbeat that wasn't entirely mine. I hated how much I felt it. I hated how much I still felt him. But as I sat there, breathing in the quiet, I couldn't deny the truth that settled over me like a whisper. Dante hadn't stopped loving me. He'd just never known how to love me without fear. And that realization terrified me more than anything. Chapter 6. I spent most of the morning wandering the garden paths behind the Hale estate, trying to quiet the storm inside my chest. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, and for a while, I let myself pretend I was anywhere else, somewhere simple, somewhere safe, somewhere that didn't hold the ghosts of a life I'd once wanted so desperately. But the truth followed me like a shadow. Dante's confession. The bond pulsing beneath my skin. The way his eyes had softened when he said he'd been afraid of losing me. I didn't know what to do with any of it. By the time I returned to the house, the sun had climbed high enough to warm the stone walls, and the estate buzzed with quiet activity. Pack members moved through the hallways, their voices low, their expressions tense in a way I hadn't noticed before. I tried to ignore it, but the unease in the air was impossible to miss. I was heading toward the kitchen for tea when I heard my name. Lorelei. I turned to see Marin approaching, her expression gentle but serious. How are you feeling? I hesitated. Overwhelmed. She nodded as if she'd expected that. The bond is responding quickly. It's natural to feel more. More. That was one way to put it. Before I could respond, 2 pack members walked past us, their voices hushed but urgent. If the rival alpha challenges now, Dante won't stand a chance. Not with his wolf this week. And if he loses. They fell silent when they noticed me, offering stiff nods before hurrying away. My stomach tightened. What were they talking about? Marin's expression shifted, something like worry flickering in her eyes. Lorelei, maybe we should. No, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Tell me. She hesitated, then sighed. There's been tension with a neighboring pack for months. Their alpha has been circling, waiting for an opportunity. Dante's weakness. It's not a secret anymore. A cold shiver ran through me. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because Dante didn't want you involved, she said softly. He thought keeping you away would keep you safe. Safe. That word again. The same word he'd used to justify shutting me out, pushing me away, letting our marriage fall apart. Anger flared in my chest, sharp and sudden. He should have trusted me. I agree, Marin said gently. But he didn't. And now we're here. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. What happens if this rival alpha challenges him? Marin's silence was answer enough. I turned away, my heart pounding. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to think without the weight of 100 unspoken fears pressing down on me. I walked out the back door and into the forest, letting the cool shade swallow me. The trees were tall and ancient, their branches arching overhead like a cathedral ceiling. I used to love this forest. Dante and I had spent countless evenings wandering these paths, talking about everything and nothing, dreaming about a future that had never come to pass. Now, the forest felt different. Heavier. Watching. I walked deeper, letting the quiet wrap around me. My thoughts churned anger, fear, longing, confusion, all tangled together in a knot I couldn't unravel. He should have told me. He should have trusted me. He should have let me choose. A twig snapped behind me. I froze. At first, I thought it was just a deer or a stray pack member. But then I heard it, a low, rumbling growl that didn't belong to anything gentle. My pulse spiked. I turned slowly, my breath catching in my throat. 2 wolves stood at the edge of the clearing. Not Hale wolves. Their eyes were wrong, cold, hungry, predatory in a way that made my skin crawl. Their fur was darker, their posture aggressive, their lips curled back to reveal sharp, gleaming teeth. Rival wolves. My heart slammed against my ribs. I took a step back, then another, but they moved with me, matching my retreat with slow, deliberate steps forward. Stay back, I whispered, though I knew they didn't care. One of them growled, low and threatening, and I stumbled over a root, catching myself against a tree. Panic surged through me, sharp and blinding. I shouldn't have come out here alone. I shouldn't have left the estate. I shouldn't have. The wolf on the left lunged. I screamed, scrambling backward, my hands clawing at the dirt. The wolf's teeth snapped inches from my leg, and I scrambled to my feet, running blindly through the trees. Branches whipped against my arms, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I could hear them behind me, pounding paws, snarls, the sound of something massive crashing through the underbrush. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I burst into a small clearing, my chest burning, my legs shaking. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know how far I'd run. I didn't know. A howl split the air. Not a rival wolf. Not a threat. Dante. The sound vibrated through me, warm and fierce and unmistakably him. Relief flooded my body so fast my knees nearly buckled. The wolves behind me skidded to a halt, their ears flattening, their bodies tensing. And then he appeared. A massive black wolf burst into the clearing, his eyes blazing gold, his fur bristling with raw power. He moved like a storm, silent, deadly, unstoppable. Dante. He didn't hesitate. He didn't slow. He launched himself at the rival wolves with a ferocity I'd never seen before. The clearing erupted into chaos, snarls, snapping jaws, the thud of bodies colliding. I stumbled backward, pressing myself against a tree, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Dante fought like he was made of fire and fury, every movement fueled by something deeper than instinct. He was still weakened, I could see it in the slight falter of his steps, the strain in his muscles, but he didn't stop. He didn't back down. He was fighting for me. The rival wolves finally retreated, disappearing into the trees with angry snarls. Dante stood in the center of the clearing, chest heaving, blood matting his fur. For a moment, he swayed, and my breath caught. Dante, I whispered. He turned toward me, his golden eyes softening. Then, with a shudder, he shifted back into his human form, collapsing to his knees. I ran to him, dropping beside him in the dirt. Dante, oh God, are you okay? He looked up at me, his face pale, his breathing ragged. "Lorelei," he whispered, reaching for my hand. I thought I'd lost you." My throat tightened painfully. I pressed my hands to his wounds, trying to stop the bleeding, my fingers trembling. "You shouldn't have come after me." "I'll always come after you," he said, his voice raw. "Always." Something inside me cracked open, soft and aching. He wasn't protecting me out of obligation. He wasn't pushing me away because he didn't care. He had loved me too much, too fiercely, too fearfully. And for the first time, I saw the truth clearly. He hadn't been trying to keep me out. He'd been trying to keep me safe. I cupped his face in my hands, my voice barely a whisper. "Dante, you can't keep doing this alone." His eyes softened, gold flickering like a dying flame. "I know." And in that moment, with the forest quiet around us and the bond humming warm and steady beneath my skin, I realized something terrifying and undeniable. I wasn't ready to lose him. Not again. Not ever. Chapter 7. I didn't realize I was shaking until I tried to stand. My legs felt like water, trembling beneath me as if they no longer remembered how to hold my weight. The clearing around me was quiet now, too quiet, except for the ragged sound of Dante's breathing and the faint rustle of leaves stirred by the breeze. The rival wolves were gone, but the fear they'd left behind clung to me like a second skin. Dante knelt in the dirt, his body still half-curled from the shift, his skin streaked with blood and dirt. His chest rose and fell in uneven, painful breaths. I dropped to my knees beside him, my hands hovering uselessly in the air before I finally forced myself to touch him. "Dante," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Look at me." He lifted his head slowly, as if it weighed too much. His eyes, still faintly gold, met mine, and something inside me cracked open. There was so much pain in his expression, so much exhaustion, but beneath it all was something else. Something raw and unguarded. "Lorelei," he breathed, my name barely more than a rasp. "Are you hurt?" The question hit me like a blow. Even now, bleeding and barely able to stand, his first thought was me. "I'm fine," I said, though my voice trembled. "You're the one who, Dante, you're bleeding." He glanced down at himself as if noticing the wounds for the first time. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing," I snapped, my fear spilling over into anger. "You could have died." He gave a weak, humorless laugh. "Not while you were in danger." My throat tightened painfully. I pressed my hands to the worst of his wounds, trying to stop the bleeding even though I knew I wasn't doing much. His skin was warm beneath my palms, too warm, and I felt the faint tremor running through him. "You shouldn't have followed me," I whispered. "I had to." His voice was soft, strained. "I felt your fear through the bond." "I couldn't," he broke off, closing his eyes as if the memory hurt. "I couldn't lose you." The words settled over me like a weight, heavy and undeniable. I'd spent so long believing he'd pushed me away because he didn't care. Because I wasn't enough. Because I didn't belong in his world. But sitting there in the dirt, his blood on my hands, his breath warm against my cheek, I saw the truth with painful clarity. He hadn't pushed me away because he didn't love me. He'd pushed me away because he loved me too much. "Dante," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me help you?" He opened his eyes, and the emotion in them nearly undid me. "Because I was afraid," he said softly. "Afraid that if you knew how dangerous things were, you'd stay. And if you stayed, you'd be a target." "I was your wife," I said, my voice cracking. "I deserve to know." "I know." His voice broke. "I know, Lorelei. And I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry." The bond pulsed between us, warm and insistent, like it was responding to the truth in his words. I felt his emotions through it: fear, regret, longing, love. It was overwhelming, too much, too fast, but I couldn't pull away. I didn't want to. "Come on," I said gently. "We need to get you back to the estate." He shook his head weakly. "Just give me a minute." "You don't have a minute," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "You're hurt, Dante. You need help." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something in his expression softened. "You're shaking." "I'm fine," I lied. "You're not." He reached up, his fingers brushing my cheek. The touch was featherlight, but it sent a shiver through me. "I scared you." You almost died, I whispered. Of course I'm scared. His hand dropped, his eyes closing briefly. I'm sorry. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. Stop apologizing. Just, let me help you. He nodded, and I slipped an arm around him, helping him to his feet. He leaned heavily against me, his weight warm and solid, and for a moment, it felt like stepping back into a memory, one of the good ones, before everything fell apart. We walked slowly through the forest, the trees blurring around us. Dante's steps were unsteady, his breath coming in shallow gasps, but he didn't complain. He just held on to me, his fingers curling weakly around my arm as if I were the only thing keeping him upright. When the estate finally came into view, relief washed over me so strongly, I nearly collapsed. Marin and 2 pack members rushed toward us, their expressions shifting from shock to urgency. What happened? Marin demanded, her hands already moving to support Dante. Rival wolves, I said, my voice shaking. They attacked me. Dante, he saved her, Dante murmured, his voice barely audible. Marin shot him a look that was equal parts exasperation and admiration. Of course he did. They helped him inside, and I followed, my heart pounding. The healer led him to a small room near her office, instructing the others to bring supplies. I hovered near the doorway, unsure if I should stay or go. Dante looked up at me, his eyes soft despite the pain. Don't leave. The words were quiet, almost fragile, but they hit me with the force of a tidal wave. I stepped inside. Marin worked quickly, cleaning and bandaging his wounds with practiced hands. Dante winced, but didn't pull away. I stood beside him, my hand resting lightly on his arm, offering what little comfort I could. When Marin finally stepped back, she gave me a knowing look. He'll be okay. He just needs rest. I nodded, my throat tight. Thank you. She left us alone, closing the door softly behind her. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Dante lay back against the pillows, his breathing slow and steady, his eyes half closed. I sat beside him, my fingers brushing his hand without thinking. Lorelei, he murmured, his voice soft and raw. I meant what I said. I can't lose you. I swallowed hard, my heart aching. You won't. His eyes opened, gold flickering faintly. Promise? I hesitated, the weight of the moment settling over me like a warm, heavy blanket. The bond pulsed between us, steady and sure, and for the first time in years, I didn't fight it. I'm here, I whispered. I'm not going anywhere. His fingers curled around mine, warm and gentle. And in that quiet room, with the scent of pine drifting through the open window and the bond humming softly beneath my skin, I realized something terrifying and undeniable. I wasn't just here to save him. I was here because part of me had never stopped loving him. And maybe I never would. Chapter 8. I didn't leave Dante's side for a long time. Even after Marin finished tending to his wounds and slipped quietly out of the room, I stayed there, sitting on the edge of the bed with my hand wrapped gently around his. His skin was warm beneath my fingers, warmer than it should have been, and every now and then a faint tremor ran through him, like his body was still fighting the remnants of the shift. He slept for a while, his breathing slow and uneven, his brow furrowed as if even unconsciousness couldn't fully ease the strain. I watched him, unable to look away. There was something about seeing him like this, vulnerable, unguarded, that made my chest ache in a way I didn't know how to name. When he finally stirred, his eyes fluttering open, the first thing he did was look for me. Lorelei, he murmured, his voice rough with sleep and pain. I'm here, I said softly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. You're okay. He exhaled shakily, his shoulders relaxing. I thought you might leave. I told you I wouldn't, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And I meant it. Something warm flickered in his eyes, something that made the bond pulse gently beneath my skin. I felt it like a soft tug, a quiet hum, a reminder of everything we'd once shared and everything we'd lost. Before either of us could say more, Marin returned, her expression serious but calm. She closed the door behind her and stepped closer, her gaze flicking between us. We need to talk, she said gently. Both of you. Dante pushed himself up slowly, wincing as he adjusted against the pillows. I helped him, my hand steadying his shoulder, and he leaned into the touch without hesitation. The bond pulsed again, warm and insistent, and I felt my breath catch. Marin sat in the chair beside the bed, folding her hands in her lap. Dante's wolf is stabilizing for now, but it won't last. The temporary ritual helped, but it's not enough. The bond is still fractured. I swallowed hard. What does that mean? It means, she said softly, that Dante won't survive unless the bond is fully restored. The room seemed to tilt around me. I gripped the edge of the mattress, trying to steady myself. Fully restored, as in completing the mate bond, Marin said gently. The final ritual. The one you never finished. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear her next words. It's the only way to save him. I looked at Dante, and the fear in his eyes nearly undid me. Not fear for himself, fear for me. Fear of what this would mean. Fear of what he was asking without asking. Lorelei, he said quietly, his voice raw. You don't have to do this. I don't want you to feel trapped. I don't want you to feel obligated. But you'll die if I don't, I whispered. He closed his eyes, pain flickering across his face. I don't want you to choose me because you feel like you have no choice. I stared at him, my chest tight. Dante, I'm not choosing you because I have to. I'm choosing you because my voice broke, and I looked away, unable to finish the sentence. Marin stood, her expression soft. I'll give you two a moment. When she left, the room felt too quiet, too intimate. Dante reached for my hand, his fingers trembling slightly. Lorelei, he said softly, I need you to understand something. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. But I was so afraid of losing you that I pushed you away. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was doing the right thing. I felt tears sting my eyes. You should have trusted me. I know, he whispered. And I'm sorry. For everything. For every night I shut you out. For every moment I made you feel alone. For every time I chose fear over honesty. I looked at him then, really looked at him, and the truth settled over me like a warm, heavy blanket. I still loved him. I had never stopped. And maybe I never would. Dante, I said softly, I want to do the ritual. His breath caught. Lorelei. I'm not doing it because I feel obligated, I said, my voice steady. I'm doing it because I want to. Because I can't lose you. Not again. His eyes softened, gold flickering like a spark catching flame. Are you sure? I nodded. Yes. He exhaled shakily, his shoulders sagging with relief. Okay. Marin returned a few minutes later, carrying a small wooden box carved with intricate runes. She set it on the table beside the bed and opened it, revealing a collection of candles, herbs, and a small silver blade. The ritual is simple, she said gently, but powerful. It requires honesty, intention, and a willingness to open your hearts to each other completely. I felt Dante's gaze on me, warm and steady. I met his eyes, and for the first time in years, I didn't look away. Marin lit the candles, their soft glow filling the room with warmth. She placed the herbs in a small bowl and lit them, the smoke curling upward in delicate spirals. The scent was sweet and earthy, calming and grounding. Take each other's hands, she instructed. Dante reached for me, his fingers warm and steady. The moment our hands touched, the bond pulsed stronger than before, brighter, like a spark catching fire. Now, Marin said softly, speak your truth. Dante looked at me, his eyes shining. Lorelei, I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm sorry for every moment I made you doubt that. I'm sorry for letting fear control me. I'm sorry for hurting you. I want to spend the rest of my life making it right. My breath caught, tears slipping down my cheeks. Dante, I love you too. I never stopped. But I was so hurt, so confused. I felt like you didn't want me, like I wasn't enough. You were always enough, he whispered. More than enough. The bond pulsed again, warm and bright, and I felt it, really felt it, like a thread weaving itself back together, stronger than before. Marin handed us the silver blade. A drop of blood from each of you, she said gently. To seal the bond. Dante took the blade first, pressing it lightly to his palm. A single drop of blood welled up, glowing faintly gold. He handed the blade to me, and I did the same, my blood shimmering with a soft, warm light. Marin guided our hands together, pressing our palms against each other. The moment our blood touched, the bond ignited. A surge of warmth rushed through me, filling my chest, my limbs, my entire being. It was like stepping into sunlight after years of darkness. I felt Dante, his emotions, his heartbeat, his love woven into mine, steady and sure. He gasped softly, his eyes widening. "Lorelei." "I feel it," I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. "I feel you." The bond settled between us, warm and steady, humming like a quiet song beneath my skin. Dante pulled me into his arms, holding me as if he never wanted to let go. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. Chapter 9. The morning of the challenge dawned too quietly, as if the world itself were holding its breath. I woke before the sun, the room still dim and washed in soft gray light. For a moment, I lay still, listening to the faint hum of the bond, warm and steady beneath my skin. It pulsed like a second heartbeat, a quiet reminder of everything that had changed the night before. Dante was already awake. I felt him before I saw him, his presence brushing against my awareness like a warm breeze. When I opened my eyes, he was standing near the window, shirtless, the early light outlining the strong lines of his back and shoulders. His posture was tense, his hands braced against the windowsill as he stared out at the forest. He looked powerful. He looked whole. He looked like the alpha he was born to be. But there was something else in the set of his shoulders, something heavy, something uncertain. "Dante." My voice was soft, still thick with sleep. He turned, and the moment his eyes met mine, the bond pulsed warmly. His expression softened, the tension in his jaw easing just a little. "Good morning," he said quietly. I sat up, pulling the blanket around me. "You didn't sleep." He shook his head. "Couldn't." I didn't need to ask why. The challenge loomed over both of us like a storm cloud, dark and inevitable. The rival alpha had issued the formal notice late last night, an official challenge for leadership, for territory, for everything Dante had spent his life protecting. And it was happening today. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my heart pounding. "Are you ready?" He hesitated, then crossed the room and sat beside me. The mattress dipped under his weight, and the warmth of him seeped into my skin. He reached for my hand, his fingers brushing mine with a gentleness that made my chest ache. "I'm ready," he said softly. "But I'm not going to pretend I'm not scared." I blinked, surprised. "You? Scared?" He gave a small, humorless laugh. "I'm not afraid of the fight. I'm afraid of losing you. Of what happens if—" "Don't," I whispered, squeezing his hand. "Don't talk like that." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and the emotion in his eyes made my breath catch. "The bond changed everything," he said quietly. "I feel you now. All of you. Your fear. Your hope. Your heart. It's overwhelming." I swallowed hard. "Is that a bad thing?" "No," he said, his voice rough. "It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. But it also means I can't lose. Not today." "You won't," I said, though my voice trembled. "I'll be with you." His thumb brushed over my knuckles, slow and tender. "I know." We sat there for a long moment, wrapped in silence and the soft glow of morning. The bond hummed between us, warm and steady, grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. I felt his emotions, fear, determination, love woven into mine, steadying me even as my heart raced. When the sun finally crested the horizon, casting golden light across the room, Dante stood and offered me his hand. "Come with me," he said. I took it without hesitation. The pack had gathered in the clearing behind the estate, forming a wide circle around the challenge grounds. The air buzzed with tension, thick and electric, and the scent of pine and earth filled my lungs. Wolves in human form stood shoulder to shoulder, their expressions solemn, their eyes flicking toward Dante with a mixture of hope and fear. When we stepped into the clearing, the crowd parted, creating a path for us. Dante walked beside me, tall and steady, his hand warm around mine. I felt the weight of 100 eyes on us, but I didn't look away. I kept my chin lifted, my steps sure. Because I wasn't just Dante's ex-wife anymore. I wasn't just a human in a world of wolves. I was his mate. His Luna. And I felt it in every breath. The rival alpha stood at the far end of the clearing, flanked by 2 of his wolves. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair pulled back, his expression cold and calculating. His eyes flicked to me, lingering for a moment before shifting to Dante. "So," he said, his voice low and mocking. "The broken alpha returns." Dante didn't flinch. "I'm not broken." The rival alpha smirked. "We'll see." Dante stepped forward, releasing my hand. The loss of contact sent a sharp ache through me, but the bond steadied me, warm and reassuring. He glanced back at me once, his eyes softening. "Stay with me," he murmured. "I'm not going anywhere," I whispered. The challenge began. Dante shifted first, his body rippling with power as his wolf emerged, massive, black as midnight, eyes glowing gold. The crowd gasped, the sound rippling through the clearing like a wave. I felt his strength through the bond, felt the surge of power that came with the shift, felt the way his wolf recognized me, anchored itself to me. The rival alpha shifted next, his wolf large and gray, eyes sharp and cold. They circled each other, muscles tense, paws digging into the earth. The air crackled with anticipation, the forest holding its breath. Then they collided. The impact shook the ground beneath my feet. Snarls filled the air, sharp and violent, as the wolves clashed, teeth snapping, claws raking, bodies twisting in a blur of fur and fury. I felt every moment through the bond, Dante's focus, his determination, his pain when the rival alpha's teeth grazed his shoulder. "Dante," I whispered, my hands trembling. He heard me. I felt it. The bond pulsed, warm and fierce, and Dante surged forward with renewed strength. He pushed the rival alpha back, his movements sharp and controlled, every strike fueled by something deeper than instinct. He wasn't fighting for dominance. He wasn't fighting for pride. He was fighting for us. The rival alpha lunged, aiming for Dante's throat, but Dante dodged, twisting with a grace that took my breath away. He pinned the rival wolf to the ground, his jaws closing around the other's scruff, not to kill, but to force submission. A hush fell over the clearing. The rival alpha stilled. Then, slowly, he lowered his head. Submission. The challenge was over. Dante released him and stepped back, his chest heaving, his fur matted with dirt and blood. The rival alpha shifted back into human form, kneeling in the dirt, his head bowed. "You win," he said, his voice hoarse. The pack erupted into cheers, the sound echoing through the forest. Wolves clapped Dante on the back, their faces alight with relief and pride. But Dante didn't look at them. He looked at me. He shifted back, his body trembling with exhaustion, and before I could move, he was in front of me, pulling me into his arms. I wrapped my arms around him, holding him tightly, feeling the warmth of his skin, the steady beat of his heart. "You did it," I whispered, tears slipping down my cheeks. "We did it," he murmured, pressing his forehead to mine. "I felt you with me the whole time." The bond pulsed, warm and steady, and I knew he was right. We had done this together. And for the first time in years, I felt like the future was something we could face, not apart, but side by side. Chapter 10. The celebration lasted long into the night, but I slipped away early, overwhelmed by the noise and the warmth and the sheer relief that pulsed through the pack like a heartbeat. Dante had been swallowed by a crowd of wolves clapping him on the back, congratulating him, thanking him, and though he kept glancing toward me, silently asking me to stay, I needed a moment to breathe. I wandered through the quiet hallways of the estate, letting my fingers trail along the familiar wooden banisters, the soft glow of lanterns guiding my steps. Everything felt different now, lighter, warmer, as if the house itself had exhaled after holding tension for far too long. The bond hummed beneath my skin, steady and comforting, a gentle reminder that Dante was safe. Alive. Whole. I stepped out onto the back terrace, the cool night air brushing against my skin. The moon hung low in the sky, full and bright, casting silver light across the gardens. The scent of pine drifted through the breeze, mingling with the faint sweetness of night-blooming flowers. I closed my eyes, breathing it in, letting the quiet settle around me like a soft blanket. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful. Footsteps sounded behind me, soft and familiar. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. The bond told me everything: his warmth, his presence, the way his emotions brushed against mine like a gentle touch. "Lorelei," Dante said softly. I opened my eyes and turned to face him. He stood in the doorway, the moonlight catching in his dark hair, his expression soft and tired and unbearably tender. He'd cleaned up since the fight, though faint bruises still marked his skin, and his shirt hung open at the collar, revealing the steady rise and fall of his chest. "You disappeared," he said, stepping toward me. "I needed some air," I admitted. "It was a lot." He nodded, stopping beside me at the railing. "I know. I felt it." The bond pulsed gently, warm and steady. I leaned against the railing, looking out at the moonlit garden. "How are you feeling?" "Better," he said, and I could hear the truth in his voice. "Stronger. Whole." He paused, then added quietly, "Because of you." I swallowed hard, my heart tightening. "You did the hard part." "No," he said, turning to face me fully. "We did it. Together." The words settled over me like a warm embrace. I looked up at him, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The night wrapped around us, soft and quiet, and the bond hummed between us, steady and sure. "I've been thinking," Dante said finally, his voice low. "About us. About everything that happened. Everything I did wrong." "Dante." "No," he said gently, shaking his head. "Let me say this." I fell silent. He stepped closer, his hand brushing mine on the railing. "I can't change the past. I can't undo the mistakes I made. But I can promise you this: I won't make them again. I won't shut you out. I won't let fear control me. I want a life with you, Lorelei. A real one. One where we talk, and fight, and laugh, and grow. Together." My breath caught. "Dante." He reached up, cupping my cheek with a tenderness that made my eyes sting. "I love you," he whispered. "I've always loved you. And I'm done pretending I don't need you." Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. I leaned into his touch, closing my eyes. "I love you too," I whispered. I never stopped. He exhaled shakily, his forehead resting against mine. The bond pulsed, warm and bright, filling my chest with a feeling so full it almost hurt. "Come with me," he murmured. Before I could ask where, he took my hand and led me down the terrace steps, through the garden, and along a narrow path that wound toward the edge of the estate. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting silver patterns across the ground. The air was cool and crisp, and the bond hummed with quiet anticipation. We stopped in front of a small cottage nestled among the pines. I blinked, surprised. The windows glowed softly from within, and the porch was lined with potted plants, my plants, the ones I'd left behind when I moved out. "What is this?" I whispered. Dante squeezed my hand. "You're home," he said softly. "If you want it." I stared at him, my heart pounding. "Dante." "I renovated it," he said, his voice gentle. "After you left. I didn't know if you'd ever come back, but I wanted you to have a place here. A place that was yours. A place that felt like you." Emotions swelled in my chest, warm and overwhelming. "You kept my plants alive?" He smiled, a soft, crooked smile that made my heart flutter. "I tried. Marin helped. A lot." I laughed, wiping at my eyes. "I can't believe you did this." "I'd do anything for you," he said simply. He pushed open the door, and warm light spilled out onto the porch. I stepped inside, my breath catching. The cottage was cozy and inviting, filled with soft colors and warm textures. A small fireplace crackled in the corner, casting flickering shadows across the room. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books and trinkets I recognized from our old home. A quilt, my quilt, lay folded neatly on the couch. It felt like stepping into a dream I'd once had and forgotten. I turned to Dante, my heart full. "It's perfect." He stepped closer, his hands sliding gently around my waist. "It's ours," he murmured. "If you want it to be." I looked up at him, the bond humming softly between us, warm and steady. I do, I whispered. I want this. I want us. His breath hitched, and then he kissed me soft.